All right, my friend. I'm sorry, I can't remember your name now. I think it's Pravin. But you sent me this. This is the message you sent to me on through my Facebook page, and you wanted me to look at this little macro procedure here, subroutine. This is about. If you take a look at the bottom right of my screen, well, the time right now is about 4:52 in the morning. I've spent the last 30 minutes looking at it. I just woke up and I promised myself I would do this. It's Monday morning on the 22nd of March. 21st, I think. Let me see that. Yeah, okay, so it's 21st of March. Now, I have this is my copy of Microsoft Excel here, and I've been playing around with data relevant to the range that you defined in your question to me or your request. Now, this is your code, but I have now made modifications to it. This is just my first take of it. The first thing I'll tell you straight away, let me take you back to that screenshot of your code. This is your original code as sent to me by whoever it was that you said did it. I have a categorization now, kind of a mind map I recently created based on what I've learned from reading the book by Stephen Bolin and Rob Bovey, and who's the other guy now? The guys who wrote Professional Excel Development. And I think whoever it was that wrote you this code falls in category 3. I think he's a VBA developer, somebody who was already doing using VBA, okay, or his power user who started using VBA too early, or somebody who was a VB6 developer and then switched to VBA developer. In other words, he's not somebody really who is a business user focused minded person that is then learning VBA or using VBA to solve what we call management problems. Because at the end of the day, what you have is a data handling problem. So you don't have to, we don't have to code the life out of everything. What I see here is that there's an unnecessary use of code for certain things, small as the line of code is, lines of code are. Now, so I feel that the person needed not have used this manner of coding to achieve this purpose. Excel offers you a lot of. In fact, we who are developers of Excel VB solutions, we say let Excel be Excel. So I think I won't dwell too much on that. I'll just show you what I've done, and if you think it's appropriate to your needs, then go ahead and use it. But there's so many other ways that this could have been done. So what I did was to populate this table. I'll just show you again. I've been testing the data, so alright, so I populated the table with data fitting the range you defined, and I assume it was numeric data, so I used just ones. I just wanted data in there. Alright, so now then let me just clean this up. This is your sheet 2. That's the reference you have a reference to the sheet object, sheet 2 object. Now in the code, what I did was to make it easy for myself, I just used this form control, this command button, and I linked it to the macro, and now I put in a conditional statement here. Okay, the criteria basically is it will look for a certain range that I've defined and named it as check column status, and if that range, which actually is cell, has a 0 value in it, it will indicate therefore that column I, which you are referring to, has no data in it. Because what you were saying is if column I has no data, you don't want to export it to sheet 2. Now I made no changes whatsoever to your own code, but what I did was then to have this option where you have, excuse me just a minute, yeah, okay, let me finish. Right, I'm sorry, I just had to attend to somebody. Right, so what I put here is a conditional statement that makes the application, the VBA, skip running this particular body of code and then instead go on to this one in a subroutine within the macro procedure. Now, so this block of code here will carry out an alternative set of actions that will enable you exclude column I from what you've done, from the data you want to export. Okay, so what I basically did therefore was to split the table of data into 2, quote unquote, and so what you have is I do range A to H, or columns A to H, and then I do columns J to N, and in between them I is left out. But the only condition under which this second block of code will run is if this range here is found to reflect a value of 0. So what did I do to make that range be dynamic to tell us whether or not it has a 0? Basically what I did was to look at column I and use the count function. Like I said, this is just my first go at this, and I just use the column I to do a count, and if there's nothing in there, it should be 0. Okay, in other words, so if I go to column I now and I just delete everything, it shows the value of 0. In other words, column I has nothing. Okay, once the application sees that, what it does is when I click the button to run the code and you go to sheet 2, you see that it doesn't take column I with it. It leaves column I. It doesn't export data from column I. Okay, now if I go back and I put in data, okay, let me just do that. Okay, and I say okay, so if I put in data here, okay, yeah, right. So once I put back data into column I and I click, well, I'm going to go back here and also erase this, so just because this is all manual now, we're not exactly building a real application. So if I click the button again to run the code, what happens is this time around column I gets carried along as well. Now I'm going to send you this workbook, and you can take a look at the code.